It's going to be a free-flowing questions from the students. Anything you want to share, just an informal conversation. How's that sound? Okay, wonderful. Who wants to start us off this morning? Well, how about if we do this? Yeah, why don't you introduce yourselves and maybe let us know what theater of war you were in. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Jack Grady, and I'm the youngest of this group.
He lies a lot too.
Well, here's why I say that. I entered World War II in 1945, right out of high school. I was 17 years old. So, and that's why I said that. I think I could probably document that.
I would argue with you.
But anyway, I'm hoping that we will be able to answer, not only answer your questions, but give you a little bit of a feeling of the atmosphere at the time of the closing of the war. So maybe I should just go later. Okay, go ahead.
What branch of service were you in, Mr. Grady?
Beg pardon?
What branch of service were you
I
in?
was in the Navy.
Navy.
Yes. Served aboard a ship, a transport ship.
Artis is the oldest, he should really go.
Yeah, I'm the oldest, but I'm the best looking. I went into the.
Stand up, Artis. Stand up.
No.
Oh, you don't have to stand up. Stay seated. You're good. You're fine.
You made me forget my place.
The name is Artis. Okay, go from there.
When I was 18, I was drafted. I had to register for the draft, and I was drafted in June of the same year. I had a choice of which branch of the service I wanted to join. I mean, not join, but go into. And so I chose the Navy. And let's see, I was shipped. I don't want to go through all this boot camp stuff.
No, we don't want to do that.
I was assigned to a new ship that was being commissioned, USS Carroll DE-171. And we escorted about 75 to 100 ships across the Atlantic. We actually crossed and came back 9 times, but that's 18 trips across the Atlantic. And we went into the Mediterranean Sea and waited for those ships to go wherever they were going. And when they came back, we escorted them back across the Atlantic Ocean. And we ran into some U-boats, German U-boats, and some aircraft. So I'll stop there and let somebody.
You went through the Panama Canal a few times.
That comes later. Don't
Oh,
get me
I'm Guy Longshore, and I was drafted, and I asked to go in the Air Force, and they sent me to Miami for basic training, which wasn't too bad, you know. But then from there, they sent me up to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and had me digging ditches and building runways, and I said, I want to fly an airplane. So I went to see my captain, and he transferred me back into the pilot training. And I did all right, going through part of it, until I got to Bennettsville, South Carolina, and I was flying Stearman PT-17, and on my last check ride, I came in, and there was a lot of water on the runway, and I tried to land where it was dry, so I tried to stretch my glide and went off into a grove of pine trees. And so 3 days later, I was on the way to Denver, Colorado, to gunnery school. I decided I'd be a better gunner than I would a pilot. And from there, from gunnery school, in the Air Force, back then, they used to ship you all over the country. You go to Florida, gunnery school, go somewhere else. And finally, we got a B-29, went to Kansas and picked up a brand new B-29 and flew it over to Hawaii and then Kwajalein and on Guam and then finally to Saipan. I was on Saipan about 1.5 years. And we were flying missions dropping heavy bombs over Japan, and General May came over and realized that most of the bombs we were dropping were ending up in the water. That's where they discovered the jet stream, because say we'd have a 100-mile-an-hour tailwind or something, you're dropping the bombs, they're not going to go exactly where you think they're going to go. So, but after that, what I did, oh yeah, anyway, about that time was, I saw the Enola Gay take off one morning, and then 3 days later I found out what it was and what was happening. And then 2 weeks later, we started dropping supplies to the prisoner of war camps. And that was more exciting than anything that happened before that. Because we were flying in right at treetop levels. You could see the curtains blowing out of the windows. And it was just too traumatic to see the people out there on the streets. We hit a lot of people, killed a lot of Japanese because those drones were dropping. They couldn't get out of the way. And so anyway, after that, I came on home, I guess. Your turn, sir.
Excuse the phone, I forgot to turn it off. Will Oubre, I was in the Navy, and I was about like Artis. I turned 17 in October, and I went in the Navy February of '43. Went to boot camp in San Diego, went to aviation machinery school in Norman, Oklahoma, went to radar school, went to gunnery school, and then they put me in a fighter squadron. I don't know why, but that's where I ended up. We went for a shakedown cruise aboard the Altamaha carrier. Excuse me. It was 2 weeks, and I stayed seasick for 2 weeks. So when I came back, they shipped me to Willow Run, Michigan. That's between Ypsilanti and Detroit, Ford Motor Plant, to B-24 school. I was 18 years old at that time, and when I got out 16 weeks there, they sent me to Camp Kearney, San Diego. They put me in a squadron, BD-3, Photo Reconnaissance Squadron. I never had flown an airplane at one time in my life, and they put me in charge of the crew and the plane. I was 18 years old, responsible for a B-24 bomber and the crew. And there we went on into the Pacific, and I'll tell y'all more later. Any questions? But it's really something. All of us sitting here, we were y'all's ages or lower going into service. And the thing about it, I don't know about these gentlemen, but I come out of the country. I didn't know, the only thing I knew was truck, tractors, and horses. And that's the only transportation I knew. And they shipped me to San Diego, about 1,500 miles away, and I was a lost goose. But praise the Lord, he was good to us.
That's right.
We're just gonna do a round.
Go ahead, Artis.
Question.
Jack, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jack.
Keep it in.
Well, as I mentioned, I was just 17, as Will was. But before long, I turned 18. By the time I was aboard ship, I had turned 18. I volunteered. As I said, I was eager to go. I had an older brother who was an officer in the Army, and I, of course, watched the papers and any kind of information we could receive from him during, he was all the way through the World War II. So I was eager to go and ready, I thought. After boot camp, my boot camp was in Great Lakes Naval Training Center. But after boot camp, we boarded a train and went to the West Coast, and soon we were assigned a ship. I mentioned, I think, that I was going to transport. Well, by this time, we knew that things were changing and the war was winding down. One of my most memorable experiences early was going through under the Golden Gate Bridge. That's the most memorable experience I guess I had. Because, as I said, things were unsettled and we didn't know quite what to expect when we got to our destination. I thought this might help to kind of give you an idea of the atmosphere at this time. Because by the time we were on board ship and headed to the South Pacific, this message came, two messages came to us, to our ship. And if you don't mind, I'll share these with you quickly. The first, a message to our ship. And I had a good friend up in the radio communications area of the ship up in the pilot house, and he shared this with me later. But here's what came down from the headquarters, naval headquarters. Orders, this is August 15, 1945. Orders have been issued to the U.S. Pacific Fleet and to other forces under the command of the Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Pacific Fleet and Pacific Ocean areas to cease offensive operations against the Japanese. And about 6 hours later, this follow-up message was received. 1, the government has announced that the Japanese have surrendered. 2, all offensive operations are therefore to cease forthwith. 3, some time may elapse before the actual instrument of surrender is signed, and before it is clear Japanese forces have received and intend to carry out the instructions of their high command. Accordingly, danger of attack by individual surface craft, U-boat, and aircraft may persist for some time to come. To further describe the continuing heightened sense of unease and the need for vigilance, a copy of yet this other official U.S. Navy memorandum was received. It challenged our personnel to be on our best behavior, really. Japan has unconditionally surrendered the North Pacific Force, which I was a part of, will take part in the occupation of the Japanese home islands. The successful execution of this mission depends on in a large measure upon the correct behavior of every officer and enlisted man who may have contact with the enemy. All Japanese, however they may talk or act, are still enemies of the United States. They are still the people who perpetrated or condoned the rape of Nanking, the treachery of Pearl Harbor, the death march of Bataan, and the murder, torture, and starvation of our comrades in arms. Nevertheless, ours will not be an occupation in the Japanese manner. We have shown the Japanese and the world the superiority of our arms. We must now demonstrate to the world and to the Japanese people the superiority of those standards of justice and decency for which we fought. All officers and enlisted men of this command will conduct themselves toward the Japanese in a disciplined and military manner at all times. There will be no fraternization or contact other than that required in the execution of military duties. Do not initiate salutes, but return salutes tendered. Handshaking is a gesture of trust and will not be extended. Make no promises or threats. Avoid provoking or compromising incidents. Do not discuss military matters or engage in profane or insulting remarks in the presence of any Japanese, many of whom speak English. Respect the persons and the property of peaceable Japanese civilians. Be ever alert for acts of treachery. Well, I hope I give you a little bit of a feeling of the atmosphere that was around us at that time. I soon realized that the main danger that we faced as we were heading into the South Pacific was the floating mines, and we assumed that they had been released by the Japanese toward the end of the war. We assumed that, but there were a lot of floating mines in the ocean, and we had to be on guard and ready. We watched for those every day, every night, and we saw many of them. When one was spotted, the officer of the deck would call for one of the marksmen that we had on our ship, and with their rifles, they would fire at these floating mines at some distance, and if possible, and explode them. And one time, our marksman could not, for some reason, explode those mines. And it came within about this close to our ship. You're familiar with the wake of a boat or ship going through the water. As it goes through the water, it pushes the water away from the ship. Well, we were watching that mine very closely, and it came right up within this distance of our ship, and the wake began to push it away, just enough for us to get on through. And finally, the marksman did explode that mine. But those were the things that we faced. Yes, the war was winding down. It was over officially, but there were still dangers. I'll mention one other thing that'll share a little bit of the atmosphere. After we got to Yokohama, we were there twice. We were in Tokyo Bay later. But after we got there, we were taking some supplies, we were taking some military men, personnel, and we were also bringing some home. But when we got to Yokohama, we looked out after we anchored out in the bay there. We looked out, and around our ship was a whole array of Japanese fishing boats, small houseboats, this sort of thing. We didn't know quite what to expect there. But we soon found out they were looking for something to eat, food, candy, whatever we would give them. And a lot of us threw things over the side to some of these people. If they had to, they'd dive in and retrieve it. Well, anyway, that's a bit of the atmosphere. And when we, on another trip, we made 3 to Japan and 1 to the Philippines. We anchored out in the bay, Tokyo Bay. And they told us that we could go ashore, but the only place we could go was the USO. We could not go any other place. And this was, the war had just ended. So still there was this unease. But we went ashore, went to the USO, and we used the little boats, launch boats that were on our ship. We carried them because they were used in the invasion process earlier. But anyway, when we came back to the ship on one of these little motor launches and tied up to our ship, went up the ladder, ship's ladder, we got to the captain of the deck. He said to us very emphatically, go immediately, take a shower, change your clothing. The Tokyo Bay is polluted. This was a result of some of the guys' moment that had been going on for quite a while. So I hope that just gives you a bit of a feeling of the ending of the war. It was an educational experience for me. I was glad that I could participate in it. And I still have friends that I keep in touch with. Thanks.
There were,
Why don't y'all ask us some questions? Because,
well, let me
Yeah.
say this. There were 10 of these escort vessels to each crew, each voyage we made. And we surrounded from 75 to 100 troop ships and cargo ships, merchant marine ships. And when we got to the Mediterranean Sea, we went through the Rock of Gibraltar, the Strait of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean. And we waited there for the ships to unload their cargo and rendezvous with us in that area. And let's see, what else? I'm not like, I can't remember things like Jack. I remember I had a donut for breakfast this morning.
that's important, that's important.
But it had a hole in it. But it took us 30 days to go from Boston, Massachusetts to the Mediterranean Sea. And yeah, and coming back, we went a different route. I don't know why, but I can imagine why. But anyway, we into the Mediterranean Sea. We waited. We went ashore at Casablanca, Tunis, Algiers, Missouri. Some of these places we visited twice, and they were all just alike. And so anyway, we let me tell you a little bit about the ship, and that's a partial cover of it. If y'all want to pass that around and see it. We had about 6